My name is Nora Halstead, and I was 31 the night my father slid a check across the dinner table to my sister. $55,000 for Paige's down payment. When I asked what my own plans might look like, my mother refolded her napkin and said, "You'll figure something out, sweetheart. You always do." She said it the way you'd tell someone their coffee was ready. My sister got a house that night. I got a compliment with a blade hidden inside it. What I did over the next 2 years, my family never saw coming. In my family, money always ran in one direction, toward Paige. 3 years older than me, trouble following her like a shadow. When she wrecked her car at 19, my parents replaced it. When she dropped out of college, they quietly paid off the balance. When her car debt hit $11,000, my mother cashed a bond she'd held since her own wedding. You can't get started these days without help. My mother sat with her hands folded like she was praying. I did arithmetic I couldn't turn off. $55,000 was years of my overtime shifts. I waited for someone to turn to me. Then I heard my own voice, quiet and even. "That's wonderful for Paige. I've been thinking about buying somewhere too. Would there be any help for me someday?" The room changed texture. My mother patted my hand twice and said the sentence that built everything after. "Oh, honey, you'll figure something out. You always do." Paige laughed, not meanly, just easily. Someone changed the subject back to the kitchen island. Something in me quietly closed a door and locked it. I drove home and wrote a number on a legal pad, $41,200. Underneath it, everything I actually knew, which wasn't much. A loan officer named Marisol ran my numbers and came back $30,000 lower than I'd hoped. "Enough to buy anything worth owning?" I asked. "Depends," she said, "on whether you're picky." I decided it would be enough, because I'd make it enough. I found my answer at a real estate meetup in the back of a hardware store. Folding chairs, bad coffee. In the corner sat Walter Greaves, 74, 40 years a landlord, treated like scripture. I told him I wanted a duplex, live in one side, rent the other. He looked at me like I was a parking meter. "Everybody wants to be a landlord," he said, "until a toilet calls them at 2 a.m. He walked off. He hadn't called it a bad idea. He'd named the price, and prices I understood. By June I'd learned the term that would reroute my whole life. House hacking. Saturday at 10. He sounded glad, like a man waiting to be asked something by his daughter. Saturday came with rain. At 10:15 my phone buzzed. Paige's water heater had burst. Could he take a rain check? I sat in my car outside the duplex for 1 full minute, then went in alone, because the inspector I'd hired was already on the porch, and my money spends whether I'm disappointed or not. The inspector found old wiring that would cost about $6,000 to fix. I wrote the seller a calm letter asking for $6,000 off at closing. They countered at 4. I said 6 or I walk, and meant it. They took it. My father never asked about the house again, not out of cruelty. It simply slipped out of his head, the way my things always did. In July, the loan cleared. I signed 60 pages and a small brass key sat in my palm. I drove to Larkin Street, sat on the bare living room floor, ate a gas station sandwich, listened to Miss Odetta's television through the wall. I thought about calling my mother, played the call forward in my head, the gentle pivot to Paige's furniture within 90 seconds. So I told the empty room instead, "It's mine." That was the first key. My family had no idea it existed. 19 days later, at 2 a.m., Miss Odetta's toilet failed. I stood in her bathroom in my scrubs with a wrench and a repair video at half speed, and fixed it myself. That was my education. I patched plaster after shifts. Learned paint is a love language. Mowed my own lawn with a push mower from an estate sale. I kept going to Sunday dinners and kept my mouth shut. In September, I tested the water once. "I've been looking into rental property," I said between the salad and the chicken. My mother laughed, the soft laugh you give a child who says she'll be an astronaut on a physical therapist's salary. "Honey, the taxes alone." I let it drift and decided privately to stop asking. That October, I bought a second property, a small 2-bedroom for $82,000, gutted the carpet myself, rented it to a hospital records clerk for $1,150 a month. I ran into Paige at a hardware store loading an expensive grill onto her cart, paid for with a card that had our mother's name on it. She talked for 10 minutes about a flip she and a friend named Cole were planning, funded by a home equity loan. She never asked why I stood there in demolition clothes with drywall dust in my eyebrows. That November, I found an old oak key rack in the second house's basement, 4 brass hooks, carved flowers. I hung the first 2 keys, looked at the empty hooks, and decided out loud in that empty kitchen. Within 1 year I'd fill the other 2. No one else's money, just mine. I worked 3 12-hour shifts a week and spent every spare hour on the second property. The only person who really saw any of it was my coworker Dana, who asked once, sitting on paint buckets, "Nora, who exactly are you trying to prove this to?" I said something about compound interest. She let the silence sit there. By Thanksgiving, Paige announced she and Cole were officially in business, funding their flip with a $32,000 home equity line. My mother beamed. She's always had the vision. I sat there holding 2 rental properties and said, "Pass the potatoes." Leaving that night, my father pressed $40 into my hand, folded small. "Gas money. Don't tell your mother." I still have that bill. In spring, I refinanced the second property, pulled out roughly $22,000, used it toward a third property near a hospital shuttle stop. Then Walter Greaves called and offered to carry a loan himself on a duplex he'd owned since 1961. "Why me?" I asked. "It's not a gift," he said. "It's a note, because you fix your own toilets." First, he wanted to see every book I kept. He read for 2 hours, tapped my first legal pad once with his thumbnail, said nothing, and told me, "Tuesday, my attorney's office, bring the down payment." That December, almost 2 years to the day after the check crossed the table, I closed on the 4th property. I hung the 4th key, sat on my kitchen floor, and cried hard and briefly, then made tea. In February, a local reporter asked to write about my story. Saying yes meant no more choosing who found out and when. I thought of Dana's question from the paint buckets and realized the truth. Some part of me had been quietly building a case file, hoping my family would one day rule I'd been worth believing in all along. That courtroom was never going to convene on its own. I said yes, on the condition every figure got checked twice. The article ran above the fold, my photo on my own porch. By 7 a.m. my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My aunt texted the family group chat. "Is this our Nora?" Paige replied with a thumbs up, clearly without reading past the headline. My mother said nothing at all, not that day, not through the weekend. On the 4th day, she called me to the house. My parents and Paige stood in the kitchen like a tribunal. 2 years, my mother said before I'd taken off my coat, sneaking around, buying up half the county. And I find out from your aunt, you lied to this family. Notice the word, not built. Nobody lied, Mom. You never once asked what I was doing. My father stood by the window rereading the article and never said a word. Paige, leaning on the counter, said the sentence she'll likely wish she'd phrased differently forever. "So, what? You finally bought yourself a house. Congratulations." I looked at my sister standing in a kitchen she hadn't paid for and asked evenly, "Which one?" The kitchen went very quiet. I left them to take their own inventory. The fallout arrived exactly, as Walter warned. Distant cousins needed small loans just until taxes. My mother told relatives, in a voice my aunt called proud and wounded at once. We never had to worry about Nora. That girl always lands on her feet. Even my secret rebranded as her peace of mind. My father's truck pulled up outside my duplex a few days later. He didn't come in. He looked at the brickwork and said, "Your grandfather wired half the houses on this street." Touched the porch post like checking a pulse. "You've got his hands." Then drove off. Paige came by alone the following Sunday, which had never happened before. Turning her cap in her hands, it all came out. She'd lost her job months earlier. The flip with Cole had collapsed. She was 2.5 payments behind on her mortgage. "I keep waiting to feel like someone who owns a house," she said. "It's never once felt like mine. I had a $55,000 head start, and I'm the one drowning." I didn't say the obvious thing, that the head start was the anchor. My mother beat the family meeting by 3 days, arriving with a coffee cake in my kitchen, in front of the key rack. She told me a story I'd never heard in 33 years. Her own father's farm had gone entirely to her brother because he'd failed at everything else. "That's just how it was done," she said. "I was told I'd figure something out, and I did. That's not favorites, Nora. That's tria." Then she snapped her purse shut, kissed my cheek, and said on her way out, "Sunday. Paige is drowning. Bring your checkbook." Sunday came. Same tablecloth. My father slid a folder across the table, not a check this time, a refinance plan, folding Paige's equity line back into her mortgage. But the bank needed a cosigner with stronger credit. A yellow line waited for my signature. "It costs you nothing," my mother said, eyes wet and certain. "You wanted to be part of this family. Honey, this is your moment." I asked Paige the numbers out loud, evenly, like taking vitals. "Your whole life we fed you and raised you, and the one time this family asks you for something, you hand her paperwork." She shook the folder. "You've got 4 houses, Nora." 4. "And your own sister is drowning." I stood too. "You're right, Mom. I have 4 houses. And you never once had to worry about me." I know that was meant as a compliment. "So here mine back, I'm fine. I made sure of that myself because somebody at this table had to." I put on my coat in a silence with a heartbeat in it and left. My father followed me onto the porch, hatless in the cold. "Send Paige the Sunday Time," he said. That was all from that man. It was very nearly everything. Paige's house sold that summer for slightly over what was owed, and for the first time in her life, she walked away with a small amount of cash and 0 debt. The flip closed for less than they owed. Her share came to nothing. She looked up at me on the porch steps my grandfather once wired and called out, grinning, "Hey, you home?" I looked past her through the kitchen window at 4 brass hooks catching the morning light, plus a car key that has no idea how it earned its place among them. And I said the only thing left to say, "Which one?" She laughed, climbed the steps, and we went inside to do the work. Here's the only thing I know for certain after all of it. Being fine was never the consolation prize they told me it was. It was the inheritance I wrote for myself, 1 key at a time. And no one gets to slide it across a table. And no one gets to take